Okay, so we're gonna start getting into actually creating these animations. What I like to do is we've identified previously what we need to recreate. I like to open up a second instance of Animation Editor, and I like to look at the weapon that I am trying to mimic. In this case, it's the AK-74. I'm going to bring up the AK's weapon model, and I'm going to make sure I'm on the weapon instance, and I know the first one I want to do is the bolt pose. So there's the AK bolt pose animation. We see it's 3 frames. I think importing into Infusion and viewing it in the animation editor here adds a frame. So if you look, I have frame 0, frame 1, frame 2. There is no actual frame 3. It just kind of goes backwards after that. So I need to make an animation of 2 frames that has my bolt in the forward position, in the maximum rear position, and then the forward position again. And then I would export that in and get that fixed. So I'll do all the animations first, and then we'll see if there's still time in the video. Then I'll try to do the export really quick. But I know a lot of people get confused on export, so I'm probably going to want to talk more about that. So I'm going to come to my gun here. I'm going to select my armature, and I'm going to go into pose mode. And actually, I might even bring up the animation workspace because I'm just used to working in it. Yours might look different. I don't even know if I've made changes to this or if this is default, but this is what I'm going to do first. I don't want the dope sheet. Well, you do at first, and then you want to go to Action Editor. I'm going to make actions for all the animations I need to replace. And the first one, I'm going to look at the name of it, is W underscore AK-74 underscore bolt underscore pose. So I'm just going to do the same thing but with the name of my weapon. W AK-S74U underscore bolt underscore pose. And then hit the little fake user icon. That saves it. Don't really know why. I would consider myself also a beginner. I'm just kind of lowering my frame range here. Okay, so the first pose in this animation was the bolt closed, which is just our resting pose. So that's what we're going to go with. And I'm going to, I just need to keyframe the bolt bone, which also sometimes it helps a lot of people if you're selecting the armature, you go to viewport display, hit in front, then this will show no matter where it is. It's situational for me personally, but okay, so it's already in the resting position, so I'm going to keyframe this. If you don't know what a keyframe is, start googling what Blender keyframe animations are, and because this requires you to have some basic knowledge of animating. It's not hard to learn. You can learn it pretty quick. But I've now keyframed the bolt. I'm going to go to my next frame, and then I want to move the bolt back to its maximum position. Let me keep going until I start to see the thing pop out of the receiver. Okay. I would say that's pretty much my maximum position. Keyframe again, and then going into the front here, I can either bring it all the way back and manually place it, or I'm just going to clear the transform, and I'm going to keyframe it again. Done. Our bolt pose is done. It is 3 frames, front, back, front. That's it. So I'm going to click off that. I'm going to move on to my next animation. And the next animation that I needed to replace was the fire animation. So this is very similar to the bolt pose, except the trigger is pulled. And even though the trigger looks fine on mine, we need to do that in Blender. I need to move the trigger also because when I export this, it's going to overwrite everything. So let's focus on the bolt. That is where we need to break it. So I like to use the AK, in this case the AK workspace, because it's tough to judge where exactly things are when everything's broken. So I'm going to go to what I base it off of. We're going to go to the fire animation, and we're just going to go frame by frame. Again, first frame, the trigger is just pulled right from the start. So let me see the name of that animation. W rifle AKS-74 ERC fire. Okay, so W rifle AKS-74U ERC fire. Again, I'm just mimicking the names and nomenclature that BI is using, just because that's what I like. But I haven't seen any particular reason that you would need to any issues you might run into by naming these animations your own. So I'm going to pull the trigger right off the bat. We're going to locate that. And then now let's focus on the bolt, because I think throughout the animation, yep, that trigger just stays pulled. First frame, it's forward, done. Next frame, looks like it's maxed out, close to max. Okay, so in 2 frames, we want to max out. So I'll go to 2 frames, and then I'll pull this bolt back again until we max out. There it is. Okay, that is max. And then just one thing I'm noticing here is it's 2 frames to max out, but we're not exactly, we move most of the way back on that first frame jump. So it's not a linear motion. So I want, obviously this is a bigger change on ours, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to pull this a little far back also, and so I should get a big jump in movement, little bit of movement. Okay, and then that's the frame we just did. So big jump in movement, a little bit of movement, and then snap forward all in 1 frame. That's what we're going to do here. Again, I'm just going to clear the transform on this bone, keyframe that. I will keyframe the trigger at the end here too, because it stays pulled the whole time. And that is that animation. So I'm going to click off this. Notice the trigger is going to remain pulled. You can just select all the bones, clear the transformations. It'll go back to its resting pose, aka the pose you left it in. And we're on to the next one. Idle, no need. Idle finger, no need. Insert mag, this one we do need. So notice the only bone that is moving in this whole thing is the mag release, and it looks like it's jumping a little bit when the magazine gets inserted. But we got this animation that's like 73 frames long, but we only have movement for like 2 frames of it. We need to recreate all 72 frames, and then put that movement in the right spot, because I'm trying to mimic Bohemia's animations. And this is a good example of why I want to do that. There's these events here that I can try to explain later on the export, but these are important, so I want to keep those in the same spot on my animation. So if I don't have 72 frames on my animation, I can't put the events in the right spot. So insert mag, that's where we're going to go here. And then I'm going to play this till it moves. First frame it moves is at 52, where 52 is the last frame where it remains stationary, and then 53 is where it jumps. And again, the frame count's going to be a little off in Blender, because it's going to be off by like 1. So the Blender equivalent of this is the last frame where it remains stationary is 51, and then it moves at 52. So what I'm going to do, just like before, we're going to do the name, W rifle, weapon, ERC, insert mag. Okay, W rifle, the weapon name, ERC, insert mag. I'm gonna save it. I'm just gonna keyframe everything off the start. Doesn't really matter if you keyframe just the bone that's moving or not. And we know at we know this is gonna be about 72 frames, but we know at frame 52, which is the Blender equivalent of 51, that's the last frame where it remains stationary. So we've got the mag release selected, and then I'm going to go all the way to 51, and I'm going to keyframe there. So that'll ensure that my mag release does not move until keyframe 51, and then I'm going to look at maximum motion is about 3 frames later. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm just gonna pull this out as much as I feel it should be pulled out. See, this is why sometimes I don't like it in front. All that didn't help me there because this bone's just massive. So it should move for 1, 2, 3 frames, just like it does here. 1, 2, 3 frames, and then it snaps back in 1, 2, 2 frames. So in 2 frames, I want to go 1, 2, and then I'm going to clear the transform, get it snap back, and then I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go all the way to the last frame, frame 72, and I'm going to place a bone there, or a keyframe there. And so this will ensure that my total animation is 72 frames long, with a little magazine movement in it, or mag release movement in the middle of it. Okay, this animation done. Let's go back. Let's see what we need next. Remove mag. I'm genuinely a little shocked that that's fine, but it's fine, so I'm not going to touch it. Reload action bolt. So we got to move the bolt, but same situation as before. This is not the same as the bolt pose animation. This is the animation that's playing when the character is pulling back on the bolt during a reload. So we have no movement, and at some point it moves back, and it's not nearly as quick of a movement, and then it gets released and snaps forward. And we're going to go mimic that. It's going to be about 43 frames long, and got to get the name of this one. Same as before, just rack bolt. W rifle AKS 74U ERC rack bolt. Okay. This one I think was 42 frames long. Did I make that up? 43 frames long. I like to just set the bounds on here to kind of keep my workspace like as a nice reminder to me. Okay, again, I'll just keyframe all the bones at the first frame, shits and giggles. We're gonna look to see when does this bolt first move. So there seems to be a little forward movement, which is odd. I'm going to ignore that. That's frame 17, 18, 19. Okay, so frame 19 is going to be the last frame where it doesn't move. I know there was a little bit of movement there. That's not going to be noticeable, and I'm not going to sit here and keyframe for 3 frames, just some really minute movement. And then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, about 3. There's a little movement at the end, so 3 or 4. So I'm going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. it's 5 until it fully settles. So I'm going to try to mimic that. You can see it's kind of catching the latch back there. That's what I'm going to try to mimic here. Give me my bolt. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to go back to that maximum length again. Right? And we're going to keyframe that. But then like 2 frames before it, we were actually still kind of all the way back there. So, is that right? 1, 2, 3. About 3 frames it should get to that. 1, 2, 3. Yep, and we're just gonna do like a little, go a little bit further. Right, so now that should pull the bolt back and then it kind of catches that latch. Perfect. And then it sits in that back position for 1, 2. 1, 2. For just 2 frames. I'm gonna go there, and then it kind of gets pulled back a little bit for 1 frame, which I'll mimic here again. I'm gonna just pull it back. I want to make sure there's no clipping back here with the rest of that bolt assembly. I'm gonna just pull that back a little bit, and then it's 1, 2 frames to snap forward. Gonna clear those transforms, do that, then we're gonna go to the end and do that. So that should be our full animation. We should see it click, kind of pulls it back, holds it for like half second, and then drops it. And that's pretty much what we got here. So I am going to call that animation done. You don't need you moving. And you can open this up. You can go back to any of your old animations, which is good. Go over that more later. And then what else did we need? The safety. So the safety animation, I think it's just setting it in multiple spots. So if we look here at a safety that's not broken, we have safe at the 0 frame, single, or in this case full auto at the first frame, and then single at the last frame. We're just going to mimic the same thing here. I think you're starting to see a pattern. W rifle, AKS 74U, ERC safety. Okay. First frame. I want this up to the safe position. Done. To the single position, or the full auto, which I think was its resting position. And then I'm gonna shove this down here, somewhere in that general area. That's their safety. Okay, that animation is done. I like to make sure I just clear all transformations in between, so I have the same starting point. Okay, switch mode was nothing. And triggers just, I really just, I'm surprised that's working, but whatever. Okay, the last animation we need to do, I almost forgot, is the sight. So you can see in this case, the first frame is the lowest sight setting. Last frame is the highest sight setting. Frame count doesn't really matter on this. I'm going to say that and then see if a Bohemia dev corrects me on that. Because, God, man, they baked it in there. That sucks. Okay, the frame count shouldn't matter on this because in configuring sites, you kind of just it's like a percentage number. We'll go over it, but I don't think frame count matters. So for my model, we'll get the name, ERC site, got it. Okay, W rifle, AKS 74U ERC site. Okay, so for my model, all I'm gonna do is I really only have 2 site settings. So I'm gonna go to site, I'm gonna keyframe that first position, and then I'm going to rotate this along the x-axis 90 degrees to my next position, and then I'm going to do that on the actual keyframe I want so it doesn't reset. 90 degrees, I'm going to keyframe that, and then that should be fine for my sights. I can see it over here where there's no bones. I can see it flipping. So yeah. Okay, so we've created all the animations. Next video I'm going to do, we're going to work on exporting this stuff. I'll try to dive in a little bit, talk about export profiles and all the fun stuff.